Our fellow teacher, Tamara Andreas, is with us today to talk about accessing your core being to heal childhood trauma. Tamara is an author and international trainer. She has helped thousands of seminar participants in more than 12 countries benefit from life-changing methods, including the wholeness work and core transformation. She has developed advanced core transformation formats to meet the needs of a wider range of clients. And her own client work includes deep levels of transformation, making change easier and more complete. Welcome to Avaya.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be spending time with you and with all of your listeners and learners.
Yeah, right back at you. So excited to have you here. And I'm curious, let's get started with what is core transformation?
Okay, so core transformation is a very gentle step-by-step process developed by Connie Ray Andreas, and it transforms feelings and behaviors and patterns of thinking that we don't like, including issues that result from traumatic past experiences. And it generates a profound sense of well-being, inner peace, wholeness.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Good. Thank you for the brief overview of that. And I'm curious. So since we're talking about childhood trauma today, can you give some examples of perhaps results that you've seen people get by doing core transformation, having had trauma in their life?
For sure. So there was a woman, for example, who had very serious child abuse. In fact, her parents actually used to, maybe it was step parents, I don't remember for sure, used to break her fingers as punishment. It was just really awful. I mean, I think on more than one occasion even. And so, of course, as an adult, she was affected by all of that. And she actually took our 3-day seminar, and she told me later that at the beginning, she felt this just a sense of emptiness all the time. She just felt completely empty inside. And at the end of those 3 days, she said she was beginning to be filled up. And something like that usually doesn't, turn around just like that, right? It takes a little longer. So after those 3 days, she continued working first with somebody else guiding her, and then later she was guiding herself through the process. And after about 3 months then of this, she said she just felt like a completely different person. She felt filled up inside, and everything about her life was changing. She was eating healthier foods. She was in a healthier relationship, and she was just a basically happy person. So there's one example, and there are just so many others because core transformation can work with virtually every emotional response that people can have to childhood abuse.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. And I'm curious, just take a step back. How did you get into this work? What got you into this field?
Yeah, thanks. So, first I got into the field of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And now I'm saying that what we're doing is different in some ways from what people usually have experienced when they've done NLP before. But that was the first step. When I was in high school, my older sister, Connie Ray Andreas, and her boyfriend at that time, who they later got married, Steve Andreas, they changed to the name Andreas when they got married. But anyway, so they got interested in NLP, and so then I did too. I was really fascinated by the whole idea that you could actually change how you were thinking. And so then later, like about 10 years later, Connie Ray developed core transformation. At that time, I was a sponsor of trainings in Ohio, and she came in to teach part of our master practitioner training. And it actually took me about those 3 days to decide that this is what I wanted to focus on, this method and other kinds of supporting methods because of the depth of transformation. So, I was used to seeing people change thinking, change their feelings, change behaviors. I was used to seeing that already with other kinds of NLP techniques. But with core transformation, I was also seeing people accessing these deep states of well-being, a sense of profound oneness, or a sense of love that's not just loving and being loved by somebody else, but just a state of love that just is, and this kind of a thing. And so that's what attracted me to core transformation.
I love it. A family affair. Yeah, great. For people who don't know what NLP is, can you give us a little like brief overview of that before we move on to talking more about core transformation?
Sure. So NLP well, at the core of it, it's it's a way to study how we each of us create our own subjective experience, or we could say we could create our own personal world that we live in, right? Because you and I could be in the exact same situation, and yet we each have our own experience of it that might be totally different. And so we each create our subjective model of reality. And so in the course of that, what's come from that are a couple of things. One is ways to change our own subjective model of reality to make it more the way we want it to be. And then also ways to model people who are really skilled at things, like Milton Erickson, Virginia Satir were modeled by the early developers of NLP. And so that's basically what NLP is. And you can do so much with NLP that I couldn't even list all of them if we took the whole half hour just for that. But the core transformation is really it came out of the NLP models. However, it really has become its own model because it works at a deeper level. It has its own presuppositions, its own assumptions that are different from other kinds of NLP work.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little deeper about core transformation then. So what are some of the key concepts our viewers would need to understand in order to utilize this in their life?
Okay. And some of these concepts are, I'm sure, already familiar to many of your viewers, and others are, maybe going to another level of things. So first is unconscious mind. So most people probably already know that, we do things consciously with our conscious intention. And then there are also things that just happen automatically that we don't even want necessarily. And so, for example, if consciously I want to feel calm in a situation, and yet instead I'm feeling nervous and jittery, that lets us know that it's our unconscious that's creating that experience. And so in order to change it, we need to access the unconscious. And that's one concept. Also, we work with the concept of parts. And so we often say, just in our ordinary speaking, that, there's a part of me that really wants to change careers or change my relationship. And then there's also a part of me that wants to stay with what I've got, that if it's a career, like it pays the bills or whatever. Or with our feelings, I might say, I'm really with my ex for leaving me. And at the same time, there's a part of me that kind of feels relieved, that sort of thing. So we use the parts language when we're talking about our experience. So with core transformation, we work through this parts model, we could say, this metaphor of parts, so that we're working with the at the right address on the inside, we could say. We're working with the unconscious part that is necessary to work with in order to make the change. Mm-hmm. And so then also another concept we have is every behavior, thought, or feeling has a positive intended purpose. So this unconscious part of me, maybe it's creating a sense of shame. Well, I don't like feeling shame and it's not helping me, but this unconscious part of me is not a bad part. It's not trying to cause a problem. It's actually trying to cause something positive for me. Maybe it's trying to help me be a good person, or maybe it's trying to help me please other people so that I can survive. These parts were formed when we were very young, oftentimes in very difficult kinds of circumstances. And so, it's not always very logical, but it's trying to create something positive for me. Mm-hmm. And then, so all of this, some of your listeners are probably familiar with, or some of them at least. Then through this, though, we can also get to deeper unconscious purposes that take us all the way to a core state. That's what I was talking about earlier, the state that's at a beingness level. Yeah, so that's just a really brief, I know we don't have a lot of time, so that's just a very brief explanation of some of our key concepts.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for going through those. And I'm curious too, you kind of touched on it a little bit ago, but based on these key concepts, what's unique about core transformation as a healing modality? What sets it apart in your experience?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the first thing is that the process itself feels deeply compassionate and kind to do. And I think this is especially important for people who have gone through trauma. They've already been through so much, we don't want to do anything harsh with them. And so, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that with any kind of work that we do, we're likely to encounter some kind of resistance to the work. And with core transformation, we have a unique way of working with this where we don't need to use inner struggle or willpower or just kind of bulldoze through it. Instead, we actually honor that other part of us, the part that is resisting, and include that the part that's resisting actually has a gift for us. And with core transformation, we can include that gift, and so that it makes the work more effective, more inclusive, and better in the long run. And then another way that it's unique, again, is it works at that beingness level, which is so important for people dealing with trauma. It's not just rehashing through emotions. It's going to a deeper level that then allows those emotions to be healed rather than just relived over and over again. So, and even for the part of us that was so traumatized to become our teacher. So that's something unique about it. And then the resource for change with core transformation comes through the very part of us that was traumatized, or, if we're working with something else, the very part of us that's creating the response we want to change. And so we're not like imposing something from the outside. We're not consciously thinking, oh, I want to have more inner peace on my life, so I'm going to just, do that. We're working through that inner part that was so hurt somehow, and getting that part's unique resource that's still there, that's available through the part. It's just, the part didn't know how to have access to it, but it's still there, available through that very part of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love, like, one thing that keeps coming to my mind as you describe this is just like how compassionate it sounds to like just have that self-compassion, especially when you talked about like our propensity to perhaps have resistance to whatever we're trying to heal, right? And then, but not, being mean to that part of ourselves who's resisting, right? It obviously, once again, had that purpose and served probably a pretty amazing survival purpose for us at one point. Right. So I think that, I love that. I love that it's very compassionate and loving. So thank you. Thank you for that. So what about research? I know that there's been some research on core transformation. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
You bet.